As they entered the room hand in hand, Jungkook closed the door behind them, and Wine immediately left his hand, feeling uncomfortable. The holding hands was just to show the guests and their families. Jungkook could see the uncomfort and uncertainty written plainly on Vine's face as she slowly moved towards the bed to sit there. Without a word, he approached her slowly, his movements gentle and deliberate. He sighed, looking at her. He knows that she was already forced to marry his brother, and now here she is, in his bedroom as his bride. She wasn't a toy. He could sense her discomfort, and he vowed to do whatever he could to ease her discomfort. Wine, Jungkook began softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I know this isn't what either of us wanted, but I promise to do everything in my power to make this as bearable for you as possible. He stood a few feet away from her to say that, to not make her any more comfortable. Vine nodded wordlessly, unable to form a coherent response. She was habitual of it, forced to do things without any of her will, and at this point of her life, she didn't have enough energy to even fight against it. She was sitting in someone's room whom she never talked to. She appreciated Jungkook's gesture of kindness, but the reality of their situation weighed heavily on her mind. Taking a step closer, Jungkook reached out and gently brushed a stray lock of hair away from Vine's face, his touch tender and reassuring. I know this is difficult for you, but please know that I'm here for you, he murmured, his voice laced with sincerity. As Vine met Jungkook's gaze, she saw a glimmer of compassion and understanding in his eyes, and for the first time, she allowed herself to let her guard down, ever so slightly. She kept looking in his eyes and nodded again, because she didn't want him to move any closer to her. He inhaled deeply and stepped away from her as he moved to the dressing table to get his coat off. He finally heard her speaking. I never imagined my life would turn out like this. I don't know what to make of it. Just what the hell is wrong with my life? She said, annoyance clearly evident in her voice, as he could sense she was about to cry, but holding herself back. If she wasn't feeling so comfortable around him, she would have never said a word. He made her feel comfortable enough in just a few lines that she started talking about the things she would never to anyone else, not even her parents, because she knows they aren't going to understand. Jungkook, I know, Vine. None of this was part of our plans, he stated as softly as he could. Vine just looked down for a few seconds. Then, for the first time, she asked him a question while looking in his eyes, because she wanted a genuine answer and not just what he's forced to say. Vine, do you regret it? Marrying me, I mean. Do you regret that your brother ran away? Jungkook, I regret that my brother ran away and you had to marry me. I regret it so much that I could run away at this moment to kill him. His voice rough and his fingers curled into fists, so tight that his hand began shaking. Then he turned back to face her and said, but I never regret that I had to marry you instead of him. Their eyes were locked, and he felt her lips trembling a bit. Jungkook spoke. I don't regret it because I always wanted to marry you, but never had the courage to do so or ask you, because you were going to be the wife of my brother. He was looking in her eyes as he thought. They both looked away, their eyes burning. His, because he was trying to control himself not to say anything to her about it. Hers, because of everything. Because of the reason she was here. Because of his brother. Because of him. Everything. They stayed at their places for a few minutes before he sighed and started taking off his shoes. Fine. But what about your brother? Shouldn't he be the one here instead of you? Jungkook. My brother made his choice. I know you can't forgive him, nor will I, but I can't waste my life thinking about him. I decided to forget him and cut all ties with him the moment I heard he ran away. He and I are nothing from now on. Jungkook, you're my wife now, and I'll do everything in my power to protect you. With his words, slowly she started to think that it might be for the best that his brother ran away and she is with the man standing in front of him. She can't even imagine how his brother would have treated her if he was so against the marriage that he ran away. Fine. Thank you. I know it's not your fault, but you're trying your best. I will appreciate it forever. Jungkook. I understand. Just take things one step at a time, okay? I will try. That's all I had done my whole life. I can do it again. She fake smiled. Jungkook, you don't have to face it alone, Vine. I'm here for you. Tell me if you need anything, if you feel anything. I'm your husband, and you're my responsibility. Even if we can't bring ourselves to love each other, I will always respect you. He said calmly and genuinely. His voice showed no remorse or any kind of lie. Fine. That means a lot to me, she said genuinely. For the first time, she saw a glint of hope in his eyes, and she didn't want to let it go. She wanted to stay here without looking back at all, if he meant all of what he said. Jungkook, we can't go to the past and undone what's done already. But we can try our best to make it bearable, right? Fine. Weren't you forced to marry me too? Then why are you so nice to me? I never thought I would be getting that from a stranger instead of my parents. Jungkook smiled. I was forced. But if I wasn't, I would have stayed single my whole life because I didn't want to marry anyone. But I couldn't deny the fact that I'll have to one day. So if it's you or anyone, I don't mind. I know it's a responsibility and I have to fulfill it. Fine. So I am just a responsibility to you. You would have treated anyone here instead of me the same. Jungkook. Yes, but you are. He looked in her eyes and thought to himself, special. You're special for me, the one and only for me. Fine. I am what? Nothing. I will go change. Saying that, he went to his wardrobe, while in the meantime, she looked around his room, looking at the different textures of the paintings that describes his traits perfectly. The dark colors on one side and all the light ones on the other. Looking at the paintings, it came out of her mouth. He's so. Then she stayed silent because she couldn't make much of their first talk. She didn't know who he was, for others and for her. Before she could describe him, he came out in front of her and said, "I'm so what, Wine?" Turns out he was listening when she said that. Wine looked at him for a few seconds before speaking. "Respectful. You're the only man I found who is worthy of the title man." Her soft voice echoed in his ears like a melody, and words like a rhythm to that melody. He so loved it. He smiled. "Jungkook, you're also the most supportive and respectful woman I've found. I don't think I could find someone better than you. I find you perfect than me." She looked down and couldn't believe a relationship like this. Fine. Even with all the chaos surrounding us? He nodded without any doubt, without any regret. Fine. I just wish I could be stronger for you. Jungkook, you're stronger than you know, Vine. You're the strongest girl I met. She looked in his eyes again and got lost there. After a minute, she got up to change and came back in comfy clothes that she borrowed from his sister for the night because her luggage hadn't arrived yet. He was already lying down on the bed and waiting for her to come so he could switch off the lights. She smiled at his gesture and laid beside him, but leaving distance between them. He switched off the lights and she faced the opposite side of him. They didn't speak for some minutes as they were trying to sleep. Wine. I'm having hope after a long time, thinking that this relationship might be a good thing. Promise me you will fulfill everything you said today and that you won't leave me." He waited for a few seconds, then laid an assuring hand on her arm as he said softly, "I promise, Vine. I will always be by your side." She inhaled in relief and closed her eyes, and because of the tiredness of the whole day, she immediately fell asleep, while his hand stayed on her arm as a reassurance.